Series champions from three guys who have been here since Art Howe had hair.
And here do come the Astros, or here came the Astros. The Astros went 4-2, just like they did the week before, which I would call, guys, another good but not great week. But Brian, we're going to jump in with you, man, Mr. Emotional Hole. Not that you're our emotional hole, but
Mr. Emotional Hole.
Yeah.
Do you get a sash with that title?
Yeah,
that's what my wife calls me.
Yeah, facts. So, obviously, Astros fans are way more bummed about it because, or let me ask you an A/B question. Astros were bummed about it because it was really probably 3 swings of the bat from being a 6-0 week, or Astros are more mad about it because 2 of those losses came to the Rangers. Go.
Yes. I think both are true. I think the bigger thing from any sort of big term thing is, one of the nice things about baseball, right, is, you come back 24 hours and play it again, so that, the losses don't last. Losing your last 2 to the Rangers means you don't get to make up for that for 96 hours, whatever it is. I mean, now the All-Star break is now a week long because I don't know why.
Yeah.
So I think it's part of that, right? Is that it feels much worse to lose the day before the All-Star game because, well, that's the feeling you're going to take for 4 days. And, that being said, we were sitting here at the end of April and you'd tell us, we'd be above 500 in a game out of the division and the All-Star break. We all would have signed up for that.
Yeah. And Andy projected again by Fangraphs to win the division. So all of those things are lagging. Where do you fall on that loss? I mean, do you think it has everything to do with, I guess now the Rangers really are rivals and in the worst kind of way because they're just assholes as opposed to like, we've all been good together?
To be fair, I don't think the Rangers necessarily are assholes, although they have some asshole components to their roster, like all major league teams do. Their fans, however, are insane lately. The 3 of them are really sharing that brain collectively. They're all over, social medias claiming some sort of Pyrrhic victory that they got from winning this series. The Astros now, I guess, are tied with the silver boot thing, if we care about that, if I've done my math right. The frustration for me was more the last 2 days. For all of us that long to see the National League games of the 80s where you got 8 singles and won a baseball game, it's really frustrating baseball in 2024 because I think I don't have yesterday in front of you. I know Saturday we had 9 singles and scored 1 run, and this would have been considered a fantastic game in 1983. It wasn't so much, and it is, once again, one of the worst 4-2 you can have. I don't care about losing to the Rangers necessarily. I don't care about beating the Rangers more than beating any other team. I just would like consistently stacking winning series. And if you keep having 4-2 weeks, I guess it works out in the end for you. They just need to get a little bit more consistency with their offense. And I'm hoping what we saw the last 2 days is nothing more than some fatigue setting in and they need a break versus some sort of reversal to April baseball for the Astros over a real small sample size, because it was gross Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, the other thing too with those games, first of all, there was a Rangers fan that was harassing a couple of people online saying it's okay, we like to win our games in October, we don't care. This was after the Astros won game 1 of that series. I'm like, all right, I guess. Mm-hmm. But they did go 4-2, which really does break down to 2 season wins, like Andy pointed out. It just depends on the thing. But
Orbit took him completely offline.
The other frustrating thing for that was that there were about 4 times in both games where the Astros were actually able to win it had they gotten a sacrifice fly when they needed to, or any number of things, which, of course, has been my bugaboo all the time. I mean, they had base loaded nobody out with Altuve, Bregman, and Alvarez up. You would ask for that again anytime.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's part of, to Andy's point of, is this, them regressing. It's probably just baseball. And overall, the offense has been really outstanding, even since Kyle Tucker's gone out, which we had, legitimate worries about whether the offense would be good enough with him, out for his one-day bone bruise that's lasted
a month.
Yeah. And, so, again, in the big picture, they're in as good a shape as we could have hoped for back in April. They're not as good as what we hoped for back in March. And they are, in a position to do useful things in the second half of the season. I think only Jordan's going to the All-Star game, so hopefully the rest of them can just simply do nothing over the next 4 days.
Andy, Brian gave us what we like to call in the business a segue. I think Jordan didn't look right the last 2 games. I think that there is the thought that he might be playing a little hurt. Please tell me exactly why he's going to the All-Star game.
Yeah, because it's a big deal. It's a big deal for these players to go to an All-Star game, participate in an All-Star game, go see, your peers from around the league. Maybe he wants to hang out more with the mercy pick of Corey Seager. I don't know. It's very interesting that he got put in, but that's a whole separate show. There's some ego involved. I think some of what Fromber dealt with last year, because he's a big emotional guy, is that he made the All-Star game and wasn't allowed to play in the All-Star game. And that was Dusty Baker's decision. It's probably the right decision, but it is what it is. I think with Alvarez and with any of the players, if they want to play, let them play. Would I selfishly like him to be healing up and getting treatment and doing nothing for 5 days and then showing up fresh in Seattle on Friday? 100%. But I don't think, taking 1 or 2 at bats is going to make a big deal in the grand scheme of things. He is just going to DH. He's not going to run the field. He does want to be part of the festivities. I'll be a little bit more concerned if he shows up magically at the home run derby somehow as a last minute replacement for one of those slots, because that has a tendency to jack you up for a couple of weeks afterwards. Ideally I'd like him to rest, but it's up to him, and he deserves the reward for doing it, especially being a guy that has struggled to stay healthy during his career and has missed some other opportunities to do these kind of things.
So basically, I've got my panties in a twist over nothing, Brian. Is that what he's saying?
Yes. He should walk between the bases. I would like him to hit, he'll get 2 at-bats. If he hits a home run in both of them, that would be A, cool to see, and B, really, take a lot of stress off his hip as he, goes around the bases. So I don't think it's much. Has he gone to an All-Star game before?
I know he's been on the team. I don't know if he's actually done
I'm trying to sort of remember here, Altuve is very much in I have done that before mode, and I guess, and Tucker obviously just wants to focus on actually playing again. He couldn't play up there, so no reason for him to, sort of delay his rehab. I will note, Andy will hate me because I have numbers on this. The home run derby does not screw up people's swings. They don't come back and do that. That if someone saw one person do this, and this is the way sort of stuff spreads, is that we decide it's for a reason, and then we look at the data, and it turns out not to be wrong. I'm not fun at parties. I understand.
Well, nobody likes the well actually guy, Brian.
Well, actually,
hold on, that is completely incorrect, because I work an entire department of well actually people,
and you only like each other.
An entire university's worth,
and you only like each other. That's the thing. So, all right, Brian. So Andy, both of you guys. I'm sorry, orbits drive me nuts. And I don't mean the actual mascot. He's finally settled. If you want to know what he's barking at just now, I put my mariachi's poncho thing on Darth Vader, and he was barking at that. Now, it's been on Darth Vader for a week, and he's been up here for a week, but now all of a sudden he's decided that was something we all need to be aware of.
Puppy's got a puppy, man.
German Shepherds, man. So like we talked about, the Astros are in great shape. It does look like, they're in good shape for even in March. You brought up March, Brian, but even in March, we were all kind of like, the schedule's going to be tough and the pitchers are out. If we can be somewhere around 500 at the All-Star break, there are moves to be made. So we really are where I think we all hoped we would be. I think what's helping is Seattle is very much who we all thought they were. And so are the Rangers, where those are mediocre baseball teams who have basically played mediocre all year. They're not the Astros who have climbed out of a major hole, right, Brian?
That's correct.
Major hole.
Mm-hmm. Particularly with Seattle, who is, the Rangers are, I guess, 5 games out because they've had a good week, and they'll sort of return to being out of the race. But Seattle is leading the division. Obviously, Seattle has a really good rotation. And that's it. They made a decision this offseason. They've made a decision the last couple off seasons that, spending is nice for other people, but we like profits more. That compelled like Jerry Dipoto to, spin 1,000 plates and, make a bunch of deals to wind up in the same place talent wise and, actually less good because they're actually striking out a lot more than they had intended to this season. They're a weak offense. They'll undoubtedly address that at the trade deadline. They have 5 really good starting pitchers who have, for the most part, stayed healthy this season. So, yeah, they're a challenge, but they're a beatable challenge. And it's similar with the Astros are also in the race for a wild card spot, and they're essentially, for one of the 4 spots in the in the competition for one of the 4 spots in a first round series. And it's a similar set of teams that are flawed. On paper, the Astros actually have the least flaws of those teams, and that's part of why the projections are pretty promising for them. They expect them to be the best team of that group.
Well,
Okay.
And before you move on, some of the buzz up here in regards to Seattle is they are in the hunt to acquire Jazz Chisholm Jr. At the trade deadline. That's significant because he is exactly a 100 OPS plus guy. He would be the most consistent hitter on their team if they acquired him, just to show you how bad their offense has been this year.
Well, that's what was going to be my question for you, Andy, is, okay, so if we're looking down, if we're looking like through the future glass, right? Like, I don't think you fix an offense with one player like you can fix a pitching staff with one player. Whereas the Astros get another reliable starter, and here we go, because they have already got one of the best offenses in baseball. I don't know that adding one good hitter really changes their prospects around as far as being able to score runs.
They need Julio Rodriguez to hit like Julio Rodriguez. And if he does that and they get a good pickup, that will help their offense. Their offense is always going to be, they don't have enough power. They don't have enough power throughout the lineup, particularly at, the corners. So they'll never be a great offense. They could be an improved one, and that would be helpful to them. But it will also take internal improvement, which we haven't seen from them this year so far.
Yeah. All right. So the Astros are, it's always that time of year where I kind of wish the trade deadline would actually coincide with the end of the All-Star break, so we could really start the second half as the second half instead of really it's the second half prequel until the teams really become what they're going to become, and then they start over. But lots of rumors. We're looking at, I've seen obviously starting pitching, I think is 100% going to be addressed. The upgrading at first base. I've seen rumors of, Andy, where do you want to see the Astros move when it comes to the trade deadline?
So I'm going to be the worst person in the world to answer this question because I don't think we have pieces that other teams necessarily want that we should part with. I understand, the whole parades over prospects mentality, and I'm not going to be mad if we go acquire somebody, but I have a feeling we're going to acquire a Cal Quantrill level starter, somebody who can pitch consistently 5 and 6 innings a game and just spread out the distribution of innings, moving it away from the bullpen, which is very bullpen heavy right now, a lot heavier than you would like it. In a perfect world, in a vacuum, we move one of our right-handed outfielders. We get 2 starting pitchers because I have no faith that Lance McCullers Jr. is ever going to pitch again.
No.
And I really hope Dana Brown is on that page finally.
I think he is.
We don't know what we're going to get from Luis Garcia when he comes back. Verlander's mystery neck illness. Who knows? He got COVID of the neck. I don't know what's going on with any of these starters So I think you have to pick up 2 starting pitchers if you're serious about contending. Picking up a first baseman would be nice. I am not in love with John Singleton like some of our fan base seems to be, for God only knows what reason. I guess because he's hitting 245 now. He gives professional at bats. I need somebody in that spot that hits home runs, frankly. And
Yeah.
he doesn't do that. So you could certainly upgrade there, but that's going to cost you. Honestly, it would cost you probably Jake Myers, because who wants Chas McCormick at this point? Chas McCormick is hitting worse than Martin Maldonado did in any season as an Astro. And he's still getting consistent playing time, which is just, we're hoping he's going to get on track, and I don't know what that is. So they need 2 starters, in my mind. If they got another bat who could play first base, that'd be great, but that's lower down the list at this point. But I just don't know that we have the pieces to go get a frontline starter, much less 2 of them.
Brian, one of the things, I mean, I understand what Andy's saying about pieces, but lots of times the pieces usually coincide with people with years of control beyond this year versus short-term guys. A lot of times it's just a salary dump and they'll take anything. So is that where you see the Astros ending up? I mean, the rumor is they're making that the Rangers could be making Scherzer and Lorenzen, who a lot of us wanted the Astros to sign in the first place, available.
Yeah, I mean, and so I think they're more likely to get a rental because, again, it'll cost you less in prospects. It's a question of sort of what you can find out there. And then the other sort of issue is, can the Astros outbid teams for pitchers with, control? And are they willing to do that? Because it would be, there is 1, maybe 2 pretty clear future major league starters in the Astros system right now. There could be more developing. It would be sort of Jacob Melton and Luis Baez would be sort of the 2 people, I would think. But are they willing to go into one of those 2 guys? Are they willing to go into players they're more sort of optimistic about? We shall see. The other thing that goes into the salary conversation is how much luxury tax is Jim Crane willing to pay? And there's 2 thoughts on that. One is, well, I've been asking that question for 8 months now, ever since the end of last season, and the answer is he keeps being willing to spend it. It's the first time he's ever done that, right? So, but also because it's the first time he's ever done that, right? We don't know where his limit is, right? And that's a key question, particularly when it comes to salary. And so that's, there's no answer any of us really have to that. Only Jim Crane knows that. And it's also, he may not, the number he has today may not be the number he settles on. He may get pushed because hopefully Dana Brown is good at convincing the owner to spend money. That is an actual general manager skill.
It does, speaking of Dana Brown, Andy, we'll start with you on this. It does seem like we're starting to more and more as this season goes along, you're starting to feel his fingerprints on the team. I feel like Jose Abreu getting DFA'd had everything to do with him. I've seen rumors from people with sources that Montero could very well be out the door before the season resumes on Friday. Are you starting to feel like Dana Brown is starting to shape this team a little bit more than what we were worried about at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, I think that's a process too. You don't go in. Dana Brown came into a situation where he was the GM of the world champion baseball team, and then took a team that was largely not of his construction to the ALCS Game 7. So there's not a lot of major league roster tinkering for that guy to do in that role. Your starters are set. Your rotation on paper was at least set. Your job really is to build a bench and a bullpen. He didn't really build much of a bench last year. We've seen a better bench. I would say a better, more flexible bench this year. I still don't understand why Greg Kessinger, makes appearances. Well, I guess he only makes appearances at the Sunflower Seeds because he doesn't actually play.
Yeah, he's got naked pictures of Brown's wife, and that's
but there seems to be less of a, I assume the flyer they took on Aledmus Diaz this weekend is, maybe a chance to have a better utility guy sitting on the bench than Greg Kessinger. So yeah, you're starting to see that. I think that Dana Brown has built a good bullpen. There's some pieces that he's stuck with, like Montero, like we're talking about. I don't know that we're to the point of DFAing Montero. That feels very Twitterish, but at some point that becomes a sunk cost, and you're going to live or die. Taylor Scott has been a find. That's Dana Brown's doing. Seth Martinez getting an extended shot. Ronel Blanco becoming a starter and becoming an effective starter. That's all. Those are Dana Brown's fingerprints. Next year, I think will be more telling with the position players, because you're going to have to figure out what you're doing at third base. Potentially what you're doing in the outfield, because we have too many of the same kind of hitters profile wise.
Yeah.
And maybe that starts at the trade deadline. Maybe you do get to move Chas McCormick, and I keep putting that out to the universe, hoping that somebody's going to bite on it. Because I don't want to move Jake Myers, because Jake Myers is finally hitting well enough to justify him being in the lineup.
And that's also a Dana Brown thing, because he said coming in, you're the starting center fielder.
Yeah, even with the incredible defense, Brian, you don't have to tell me how great he is from a value standpoint defensively. He's great.
Are y'all dating, Brian? Be honest. Are you
no,
Jake
no
Myers?
comment.
No comment.
But he's finally hitting enough to justify everything, the playing time that he's getting, which fantastic. So I'd rather see Loperfido in the outfield. I'd love to see Kyle Tucker come back and actually play from what I assume is a bionic shin that he's getting replaced, because that's the only thing that would be taking this long at this point.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if he's getting that from SpaceX or hopefully a more reliable company, but somebody is giving him a new leg, and we should see him.
We apologize. We apologize to all people at Tesla and SpaceX and X. Thank you.
All of them.
All of them.
All of them.
All except one.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what the second half team looks like, because I think if you're acquiring a starter, as we've been talking about, something's going to have to move off the major league roster, and that's probably one of those three outfielders. I hope it's not Loperfido. Less concerned about the other two, but I have my druthers. But yeah, it is a situation where Dana Brown has some things he can actually do now. And we'll see more and more of that as it goes on.
Let me stop you there. So you're saying if you would prefer Loperfido to stay over Myers, even, or you're talking about Loperfido over McCormick and who else?
Let's say you're moving one of the three.
Okay.
The order of which I would move those three would be number 1, Chas, number 2, Jake, number 3, Loperfido.
Okay.
Loperfido has 6 years of club control. That's one of my big concerns. Loperfido's got a better power profile than either one of those guys. That makes sense to me. Now, what do you get if you traded Jake Myers? I would hope it's a better return than what you got if you trade Chas McCormick. I would assume it would be at this point. So that's kind of my thinking on that.
Brian, would you like to reply to that? Would you like to respond?
Yeah, I'd rather trade prospects. I mean, part of that is I don't think McCormick, who's in the arbitration process, is all that valuable right now. In part because you've got to sort of rebuild his swing. You've got to think of that as a 2025 project if you're acquiring him, and he may not be on your team in 2027. So, if I'm the Rockies, do I want to trade? Do I want to get Chas McCormick for Cal Quantrill? Depends on what year I'm building for. If I was running the Rockies, it'd probably be 2027. It seems the way the Rockies run themselves, it's 2137, but that's for Go Rockies to deal with. God bless you. Yes.
I like how in Brian's head there's a universe of go-go shows, and maybe we're all getting paid by some. Oh, that'd be great. I love that.
In the go-go alternate universe.
Yeah, right.
If there's anything the Marvel Cinematic Universe has taught us, is there's a go-go everything.
That's true. That's true.
It's true. There is a long-term issue with the outfield, particularly if you see Loperfido as a long-term issue. But I think I think they're more likely to address that in the offseason. And part of why that makes me think it'll probably just be a rental.
Yeah, I kind of see us going for a couple of. I kind of see rentals all the way around for this, just to allow Dana Brown to keep doing his work that's supposed to sustain the run. And we all know how precious this year and next year really is, as far as being that close to winning it without going through a rebuild. You want to keep that going.
Look, they brought up Spencer Irrigated this year. He's a major league pitcher.
Yeah.
I think his best roles in the bullpen on this team. I hope he ends up there. Part of that is an innings concern. And Jake Bloss is a clear sort of draft success. He's up a year after, and he's cromulent, though his best role is perfecting his craft at Sugarland. He still needs more refinement. But you've needed those guys, and they've been acceptable.
Okay.
They've been people who, again, you can win games because they can do good enough stuff and then have the hitting take over. They lack consistency, which isn't surprising because they're rookies. But it all speaks to, again, development for the Astros is, they brought up Yainer Diaz and turned him into a regular catcher and one of the more promising catchers offensively. There's a lot of there's still good young players on this team. Yeah, they're all in for 2024. It's the biggest reason I expect them to make several moves is because they're pot committed to 2024. And we'll kind of deal with 2025, including all the stuff Andy talked about with what they do with the lineup. They'll deal with that in the offseason.
Andy, one of the things I want to talk the draft for a second, and we'll go with you on this. One of the things that had been Dana Brown's reputation has been that this guy can do the draft better than anybody. And Brian's already pointed out 2 players that have already kind of ascended through the lower minors, and not like they were being pushed. I mean, they earned the rights to get moved up. Factoring in the draft yesterday, the taking the player, the catcher from Houston, what do you think overall about his draft strategy? And does it kind of keep some faith in you that even though this run might close for a while, that we're not going to go back into the wilderness?
I mean, that's why Dana Brown was hired. I noticed today I'm also saying Dana Brown like it's one word. We're just going to call him Dana.
Dana Brown.
Dana Brown. That was his reputation, was that he is a master drafter, that he had his fingerprints all over the Atlanta Braves roster, and was able to identify good talent throughout the 10 rounds of the draft, not just at the top pick. And you're seeing this start with his draft from last year. You've got a lot of guys that are rapidly moving up through the organization. Now, some of that is that there was a lot of cannon fodder in the upper levels of the organization that needed to be culled. You're starting to see that, but a lot of it's just these guys are good. And he's made astute picks. Well, are all his draft picks and signings going to work out? No, but more often than not, he seems to pick the right guys. So we'll see. Yesterday's pick of Walker Yannick from Sam Houston State, by the way, is by a lot of draft measures, a lot of boards, the best available catcher that was on the board. The Astros and all major league teams need catchers. You just do. And if Yainer Diaz's great future is at catcher, then you've got a good trade piece. If it's not at catcher and you're moving him to first base or moving him elsewhere, you've got somebody that hopefully in 2 seasons is ready to start moving up. Because when you draft a college age player at this point, that's kind of the hope, that they're going to be at the major league level sooner than not. But yeah, that's part of the key, is signing the guys you really want to sign and keep them, and then keep augmenting them wave after wave of minor league players who can come up and be performers immediately and not have to develop kind of on the fly. Immediately in baseball terms being, over a course of 2 seasons, maybe 3. So yeah, that's what Dana Brown was hired for, and that's supposed to be his strength. And I hope, and I think we could, probably find one of our minor league friends on Twitter to come talk about this one day. But that seems to be where the Astros are headed and what they're good at right now. Because you have a team in Corpus right now that's a whole lot more exciting and a whole lot more capable of producing major league players than just this time last year.
Yeah, Brian, you want to follow up on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I have no sort of useful comments on whether Walker Yannick is better than anyone who was picked after them, or if the Astros really should regret that someone went ahead of them. It's hard enough to scout if you know what you're looking for. I don't know what I'm looking for when I'm when I'm watching college baseball. But the early returns from the 2023 draft, the one draft Dana Brown has done, are promising. And they've already produced one major leaguer, and hopefully more coming. And the hope is that you get more sort of prospects developing. That being said, the Astros has succeeded not by having the top level prospects, but by doing a lot of effective development at the major league level, and hope that sort of continues with guys like, Loperfido's no longer on prospect lists, but, the hope is he becomes a regular and a highly effective regular in the outfield, as soon as Friday in Seattle.
Well, I want to wrap things up with kind of a major league broad topic. I don't know if it's going to work, but I want your guys' thoughts on Major League Baseball trying to turn the MLB draft into the NFL draft. And I don't know that it's going to work because, to Andy's point earlier, soon is 2 years. Whereas you draft a guy, for the Cowboys or whatever, you hope to see him in August, or he's not on the team, right? Like you hope that you're making your team better in a very obvious way. Andy, what do you think, man? Do you think this is actually going to work? Are we going to make the MLB draft a made-for-TV event, or is this a swing and a miss for Manfred?
I mean, I think it's not a bad thing to promote your product, and from that perspective, great. They should get airtime. But this is an activity that literally used to be done in a room with a bunch of old white guys smoking cigars and passing pieces of paper up to a table.
So is the NFL draft.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the difference for us is that when the NFL drafts a guy, when the Texans or the Cowboys or whoever your team is drafts a guy 1-1 or in the first round, you're expecting to see them play that next season and produce at a high level.
And start. Yeah, he's got to start. He's got to, yeah.
If everything goes perfectly for Walker, not Texas Ranger Yannick, thank you, Dana, for saving us from that. We may see him by the 2027 season.
Right.
That's incredible because not every team is going to draft Paul Skeens. And Paul Skeens is not the norm. Now, it's interesting from a standpoint of, so to your question, yeah, I think it's good that they're promoting it. I don't know how well it's going to work, but anything that puts baseball more front of mind isn't a bad thing. If you're forcing ESPN to talk about baseball that's not the Dodgers, Red Sox, or Yankees, that's not a bad thing. But it'll be really interesting to me as the public starts paying more attention to draft picks, how quickly the public teams start pushing these more inexpensive players onto major league rosters, pushing off veteran players to save money.
This is why you guys are on the show, because you guys are playing chess and I'm over here playing checkers going, exactly. The minute you said that, I was like, exactly. You're going to push these products and also make them pay less. So
yeah. So there is a world where drafting a bunch of guys, getting the fans all excited about them and pushing out more highly paid players in exchange could happen. And if I'm a room full of MBAs and, the guys that Rob Manfred hires to do that, that's kind of where my mind would be. Why not have cheaper, younger talent constantly being pushed and having the fans demand it?
All right. I have three thoughts on the draft and
we have time for two. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Presentation. Well, tough. I'll be quick. I'll be quick and tough. One is
I'm finally awake.
Never going to be the NFL draft because when the number one pick in the NFL draft is number one pick is Caleb Williams, the Heisman Trophy winner, who we've all seen on TV and we've all seen play. That is vastly different than the number one pick is some guy from Oregon State who, if you stayed up on the Pac-12 network,
who won the Golden Spikes Award or whatever.
Yeah, right. That know what, again, maybe they were in Omaha. Part of why Skeens is a big deal is he was a big deal going to Omaha and pitching some glamour games in Omaha. He also dates a celebrity. That doesn't hurt him. And he's also this rocket ship trajectory. Again, He got it. Yeah, he had big plan in the summer of 2020. He had, in summer of 2020, he had big plans for 4 years from now, which he was going to take his commission of the Air Force and go be an officer and serve our country.
Yeah.
And instead, because he had this rocket ship rise of being great at baseball, he's going to start the All-Star game. He's going to start the All-Star game instead. America's lost is baseball's game. Two is what I really want them to do a better job of publicizing and making more important is the futures game.
Well, I was going to get to that next.
Actual set of players who are going to be on major league rosters next year.
Well, and also let's not have
the 7-inning game for Pete's sake.
And don't have the futures game compete with other games. Like, why didn't they have all day games yesterday and then the futures games at night?
Yeah, that should be the Sunday night game. And these are our stars here. And we sell that out. And that's and here's all our advertising for this. And you bring in lots of, and you can have some, players on there to talk about it when they play in the future. You can do all sorts of stuff with that. I sort of trust ESPN on that. The third is I don't know if you saw the setup. It was where they have the rodeo in Fort Worth, and Rob Manfred was walking through some saloon doors, and I believe that Rob Manfred is going to take those saloon doors from Fort Worth and bring them to whatever spring training parking lot they're having the next CBA negotiations in. He's going to walk through those, so he feels like, dang it, I am here to do my job, which is to get some billionaires even more money.
He wants his dick to get there 2 minutes before he shows up. I get it. One of the things, though, that Brian brings up, Andy, that's problematic with pushing the young stars is, they had the draft a couple of years ago where Jack Leiter was drafted alongside. I forgot who the other player was. None of those guys have really done anything, even though they were projected to be like this duo that's going to dominate baseball.
Yeah, but that's true of the NBA and the NFL as well. You get guys that bomb all the time.
You become a less famous flop.
But they're less. It's a less visible bomb because they're bombing in Double A.
But we live in a country, at least currently, that is very good at promoting things that don't actually work or make a lot of sense. And so it's not like there's any shortage of professionals who could hype up a player or 24 players or 30 players and make you think that they're the best things in the world until they just perform. And then we'll immediately turn on them and move on to the next guy. To Brian's point, yes, Caleb Williams is a more household known name, but the teams that are going to get those promotions are the teams in Omaha. I believe this series and this College World Series this past year was either the highest rated or the second highest rated ever. And as the Major League Draft has reduces to 10 rounds and continues to reduce to smaller rounds, because I think that's still in the works, college baseball is going to become more important.
Sure.
They're taking some sort
NIL
of
adds to that. NIL adds that as well. They can get paid in college now when they couldn't 10 years ago.
Now, taking a flyer on a high school pick is 1-1. That's, a thing that the NFL doesn't do, the NBA doesn't do. But you're going to have guys that get hyped up. You're going to have guys that the baseball fans are going to get excited about. And if Major League Baseball was good at marketing itself, which I see the draft being televised as a baby step towards that, you're going to see more of those things. But you have bombs in every level, and you have guys you can get excited about at every level. I know that, Jack Caglione is not necessarily a household name until you are an SEC baseball fan. But SEC baseball fans were excited to see where he was going to go. The same with the guy from Georgia. The same with Paul Skeens last year. The average fan doesn't know these guys, but the average fan doesn't know the player that gets picked up from Prairie View A&M either in the third round that becomes a NFL player of some repute a couple of years down the road. So there's some parallels. It's just still in its infancy, but I see, again, anything that's promoting the game as not a bad thing for the game. It's a harder road to hoe, but baseball loves making things harder on themselves.
You said harder. I think that reached the end of the show, guys. I think we have tapped it out. That does wrap up after this episode of Go Astros. Ballpark Nation's back tomorrow with our very first MLB show. Tune in tomorrow to find out what I thought of my time at Wrigley Field. For Andy, for Brian, I'm Jim. Have a great week and Go Astros.